Um, Good morning and welcome to the second annual Autistic Pride online event. We've got a jam-packed schedule full of fascinating and insightful speakers and presentations today. I have to give a trigger warning. During my talk, I go into detail about bullying and bigotry against gay and autistic people, and some sort of ableist phrases are going to be quoted during this time. So just a heads up. My name is Joseph Redford. I'm 37 years old. I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome and dyspraxia in 1995 at the age of 11. This diagnosis came right out of the blue for me, and while it's good to know who you are, it did come with baggage that still remains to this day. Back in 2014, I was told by Diederik Wefer, an autistic activist in the Netherlands, about a cultural tendency he'd noticed in the UK, that once you're deemed disabled, the general attitude is that of charity and pity. This is in contrast to what he perceives as the attitude in the Netherlands, which was to give the disabled person a fighting chance to participate in society. I've seen a lot of this charitable pity attitude while growing up. As an autistic person, you're met with pity and condescension. What you have to say gets ignored and dismissed, and the assumption is that you'll never be a full part of the community, and the best you can expect in life is to rely on the kindness of normal people, which they give at their discretion and which you should be grateful for. I suffered a lot of abuse for being odd before, and after the time I got diagnosed, but even that was being better, even that wasn't as bad as being pitied. I realised I was probably gay at the age of about 13 or 14, and in the mid 1990s, being gay wasn't a particularly attractive way of life to live for me. Not only was there the Jim Davidson, Norman Tebbit Section 28 style overt bigotry, but not only that, what was very obvious was the soft bigotry of pity. The attitude from a lot of straight people was that, it was like, you poor tragic figures, we don't really approve of what you do. You'll probably be dead from AIDS at the age of 25, but we care about you and will support basic human rights for you. If you show anything other than abject gratitude for their compassion, the anger from these soft bigots is legendary, which reveals them for who they are. I'm certain that many autistic people know what soft bigotry is all about and have experiences of soft bigotry of their own when it comes to being autistic. Often the same person can be an overt and a soft bigot. In school, I remember one guy calling me a spastic who should be put to sleep, and then a couple of months later saying, "Oh, I feel well sorry for Joseph, sitting all there alone with no friends," with an earshot of me in a compassionate tone. During my teens, I tried to suppress being autistic and gay. I made efforts to try and be normal, which didn't really work, and I was extremely homophobic in the things that I said and did. I hated gay people and anything related to them. I even bullied one guy at school who was dyspraxic and a bit camp, and I was also bullied a lot myself. However, in spite of being homophobic at the time, I was quite impressed when George Michael released the song Outside in 1998. This was in reaction to him being publicly caught and charged for committing a lewd act in a public toilet while cruising. Instead of being ashamed, he released a single celebrating what he did and came out as gay. I was very impressed by the defiance and total lack of apology from him, and even though I was very homophobic at the time, it showed a different way of being from being pitied. Eventually, I came out as gay in my early 20s with mixed results. People in the LGBT community didn't really have a clear idea of what being autistic was all about, and the culture of it didn't really do it for me. The attitude was very much be yourself, but not like that. In some ways, I'd accepted being autistic, but in other ways, I didn't accept myself, and there were still things I was still ignorant about when it came to being autistic. I first discovered Autistic Pride in 2007 when I found the forum Aspies for Freedom. I found that very inspiring and wanted to attend an Autistic Pride event. This didn't happen, and for me, it went to the back of my mind until 2014 when I attended Autscape for the first time. I learned a huge amount about being autistic and had a great experience interacting with other autistic people. As far as I was aware, Autistic Pride had stopped happening, and although events were actually taking place in Inverness, although I wasn't aware of that. In 2015, I decided to hold a small Autistic Pride event in Hyde Park. Hyde Park was chosen because it was a centre of political activity over the centuries, And because Amy Nelson held an event in Hyde Park in 2006, so it shows some continuity with Aspie's for Freedom. Rachel Cotton also held the first Autistic Pride in Reading that year as well, and that's been going strong ever since. I've organised an Autistic Pride event every year in Hyde Park except for 2020. This year it will be on July the 17th at 12 o'clock, and I'll put a link to the event in the chat. During the first Autistic Pride and subsequent ones I organised and attended, I felt the same sense of belonging and community that I first felt in Autscape in 2014. It was nice seeing people open up and visibly relax. It was great watching people have the confidence to speak in Speaker's Corner, an intimidating environment. But what was also really great was a sense that it was our space, that we created something that was ours. Prior to almost every single event, a lot of people were worried that we get hostility from passers-by. This was an entirely reasonable concern, as it's a common experience that many of us face. Being alone and isolated and receiving hostile behaviour from strangers. But as a group of people collectively, with self-confidence, the whole group dynamic changes. Passers-by are respectful and even deferential. And at every single event I've been to, other autistic people have been passing by, not realising that autistic pride or even neurodiversity was a thing, and were pleasantly surprised and were included in the group. Starting in 2016 and peaking in 2018/2019, many Autistic Pride events popped up in the UK and worldwide. There were events in Tunbridge Wells, Brighton, Eastbourne, Aberdeen, Inverness, Reading, Exeter, Cardiff, Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds, Edinburgh and Chester, and many, many more, both in the UK and worldwide. I like how it grew organically without a centralised authority directing or controlling it. I think it will be more robust that way and reflects the great diversity of the autistic community better. The pandemic has scuppered a lot of plans for Autistic Pride in 2020 and 2021, but I'm sure we'll come back stronger next year and beyond. I'm certainly going to hold the event for Hyde Park again in July the 17th, and other events are being organised too. I've been thinking a lot recently about how I'd like to see things develop in the future, both with Autistic Pride and autistic emancipation in general. I'd like to focus on things that have been overlooked in the discourse around neurodiversity. The neurodiversity movement has come a long way over the past few years and decades, but it still has a long way to go, because what we're fighting against is prejudice against those who don't fit in, and this is hardwired into all social species of animals, humans included. Tara Vance from Neuroclastic has pointed out that the urge to bond with the familiar and protect against the different is common amongst social species. Ducks and chickens will peck those most different among them to death, isolate them from their food sources and shield their young from them. The history of humanity is a long and ugly history of prejudices against those who are different, and sadly humans, like other species, have evolved to be bigoted. But what differentiates humans from other species is our ability to reason and our ability to adapt to a very wide variety of environments and circumstances. We live and thrive in physical and social environments that are far removed from the ones we evolved in. So I think humanity, unlike ducks and chickens, unlike other social species, could eventually adapt to include and accept the unusual amongst us, including autistic people and including other minorities. But I think the neurodiversity movement needs to realise that autism acceptance is something that is so exotic and incomprehensible to wider society. The wider society needs to be shown what it looks like. There's a need for autistic-led groups and organisations to amplify the autistic voice, but part of their duties are also to set an example for autism acceptance for wider society to follow. It is not sufficient to merely demand acceptance. You need to show how it's done and set an example within your own community. Because if you don't, then demands for autistic inclusion and acceptance will be met with incomprehension from wider society, or even worse, people from wider society want to help, make attempts at what they think as being inclusive, but actually marginalises us further, or falls back onto the cultural script that leads powers that be to pity us. The sorry history of puzzle pieces and person-first language comes from that place. In recent years, there's been more focus on the unearned privilege that many groups receive over others. White, cis, male, and straight privilege have been widely discussed. But But I think what has been slightly overlooked is the privilege of autistic people who are more able to socialize or who have better executive function over autistic people who don't. Many marginalized people can sometimes improve their circumstances using social skills by being able to blend in socially and hide what makes us different, by being charismatic, by being very organized and productive, by being Machiavellian and manipulative, by being assertive and articulate, by speaking clearly and fluently. I have some of these privileges in some areas, and in some areas I don't. Autistic people generally don't have those options open up to us. Part of what disables us is that many of us lack these skills. So in order for autistic emancipation to take place, humanity in general needs to find a different way to relate to each other. We need to focus on the content of what people say rather than how they deliver it. We need to get better at differentiating what behaviors are genuinely harmful and what behaviors are merely weird, rather than assuming all weird behavior is bad. And we need to see ostracizing as the violent act that it is, only to be used in extreme circumstances. In autistic-led circles, many people who rise to positions of leadership within these circles tend to possess social skills that are rewarded in wider society, such as charisma, assertiveness, high executive functioning, who can speak articulately and have the ability to communicate in ways wider society can relate to. This makes people who are in leadership positions privileged in comparison to other autistic people. It is the responsibility of people in leadership positions to amplify the voices of autistic people who don't have the same advantages as they do. That takes a lot of maturity and strength of character to do this effectively. Yet, unfortunately, in some cases, this privilege can be abused in autistic-led circles. Some people want power, but they also want comfort. And far too often, they go by the motto of acceptance for me, but not for thee. Some autistic groups and organizations can be even more ableist and toxic than the charities they seek to replace. There's a tendency to bully and exclude other autistics from organizations who disagree with them or make them feel uncomfortable. And many autistic people have to mask even more than in the wider world in order not to fall out of the favor of certain leaders. Often neuronormative standards are applied to other autistics. For example, I've seen people dismissed as being silly and childish or insane if they say something in an unusual way. I've also seen people denigrated if they aren't as productive or have less executive functioning. This could be the root cause of a lot of infighting in the community. Being a leader amongst autistics in a society that values neurotypical traits above all else is a privilege, not a human right. You don't need to be a leader to survive. And if you find yourself in a leadership role, you must put your others first. And if you can't put others first, then you need to step aside. The community in general also struggles to include autistic people who are non-speaking or profoundly disabled as well. This is something that needs more discussion and more action. Some people do try their best to lead autistic communities effectively. Personally, I'm very impressed by how Altscape and Neuroplastic has turned out. I think many others in the community know what's at stake and try their hardest to do the right thing by our autistics. But even if everyone within the leadership role in the autistic community doesn't do a good job, as a collective, autistic people can still make a difference and improve our lives. Indeed, much of the social change that has improved lives for autistic people has not been due to a vanguard of super productive activists leading people along, but has been due to the cumulative effect of tens of thousands of autistic people asserting ourselves and demanding to be treated with fairness, with respect, with dignity, and everyone can contribute to that in their own way. Even if you do it within your own social circles or in an immediate environment, even if you do it to one or two people, if you just assert your right to be treated fairly, but then this will have a cumulative effect if millions of people do it, and millions of voices will be heard by wider society. And this, more than anything else, does more to make things receptive to change. Although, as I've said before, society needs to be shown the way when it comes to the specifics of autism acceptance. This is why I like the fact that Autistic Pride has grown in quite a decentralized way. While it was created on the forum Aspies for Freedom, the only thing its founders have asked past, the only stipulations they've made is that it's autistic led, nothing more beyond that. Before the pandemic, there were over a dozen Autistic Pride events in the UK and around the world, all organised separately, with no centralised authority trying to dictate what needs to be done. Autistic Pride Alliance is there in case we need to make a collective response. For example, if a major charity tries to co-opt Autistic Pride, but it doesn't dictate what to do. Hopefully after the pandemic is over, there will be more events like this. So there'll be an Autistic Pride event in every town and village and all the good things that come from it. Thank you for listening to my talk. I hope you all enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you to Rachel and Ian Cotton from Autistic Pride Reading, who are hosting the event again, and Marion McLaughlin from Autistic Pride Aberdeen for your help and advice as well. And thank you for everybody who's presenting at the event. Solidarity to all, reject pity, and don't let anyone make you mask or make you feel worthless. Us autistics are an awesome bunch of people, and anyone of any neurotype who tells us otherwise can go get stuffed.